An old alien's final wish. He must marry their daughters or face the law. The old alien lay on a stone platform that hovered above the floor, held in place by silent gravity fields. His body was thin now, his once powerful frame reduced by age and time. His skin, once bright and armored, had faded into dull layers like cracked metal left in space too long. Around him stood the leaders of 7 great star clans, each one silent, each one watching carefully. They had fought wars together. They had betrayed each other. But all of them obeyed the same ancient law. A final wish could not be refused. The chamber was vast, carved from black crystal taken from a dead planet. Symbols of law and memory floated in the air like slow-burning stars. Outside the chamber, entire fleets waited. Inside, history was about to bend. The old alien opened his eyes. Every leader straightened at once. His breathing was slow, but his mind was clear. He had lived long enough to see his people rise and rot. He had watched pride destroy wisdom. He had decided that his last act would not be gentle. His voice came out rough but strong. "My final wish will be spoken now." No one interrupted. Even those who hated him knew better. He turned his gaze toward a single figure standing apart from the others, the human. The man wore no armor, no crown, no symbol of power. His dark jacket was plain, his boots scuffed from travel. He stood with his hands at his sides, calm but alert. His name was Aaron Hale, an envoy sent by humanity to observe alliance politics. He was not important by alien standards. That was why the choice shocked everyone. "I name the human," the old alien said. "He will fulfill my wish." Murmurs spread instantly. Anger, disbelief, fear. Aaron did not move. The old alien continued, his eyes sharp. "By ancient law, the chosen must unite the bloodlines of the rival houses. He must marry their daughters, all of them." The chamber erupted. Several leaders shouted at once. Some stepped forward in protest. Others stared at Aaron as if he were already dead. Marriage among these species was not symbolic. It was control, power, ownership. No outsider had ever been allowed to take such a role. Aaron felt the weight of the room press down on him, but he kept his face steady. One of the alien leaders raised his voice. "This is madness. A human cannot carry this burden." The old alien smiled weakly. "That is the point," another leader hissed. "If he refuses, the law demands punishment." "Yes," the old alien said calmly. "Execution," the word echoed. Aaron finally spoke. His voice was even. "I was not asked." The old alien turned his head slightly. "You were chosen." Aaron met his gaze. He remembered this alien well. Years ago, during a border conflict, Aaron had pulled him from a burning command ship while everyone else fled. He had not known who the alien was at the time. He had only seen someone dying. "You saved my life," the old alien said softly, reading his thoughts. "Now you will save far more." Aaron did not answer. He knew better than to argue emotion in a room ruled by law. The council declared the wish sealed. The moment the words were recorded, the law activated. Refusal was no longer an option. As the leaders filed out, they avoided looking at Aaron, some out of hatred, some out of fear. The daughters were brought in later. They were not girls, but powerful figures in their own right. Trained leaders, diplomats, warriors. Each one had been raised to rule, not to be given away to a human. Their anger filled the room like heat. One of them spoke first, her voice sharp. "This is an insult." Another said, "We are being punished for old grudges." A third stared directly at Aaron. "If you think this gives you power over us, you are mistaken." Aaron listened. He did not interrupt. He did not defend himself. When they finished, he spoke quietly. "I did not ask for this. And I do not see you as property." That confused them more than anger would have. Marriage in their cultures was domination, control, obedience. The idea that someone could reject that meaning was foreign. The council assigned Aaron quarters under guard, officially for his protection, in truth to watch for failure. That night alone, Aaron reviewed everything he had learned about alien law. He saw what the old alien had seen. The system was rigid, proud, blind. It could not adapt. It punished difference. And now it had trapped itself. The law did not say the marriages had to be forced. It did not say the human had to rule. It only said the wish must be honored. Aaron smiled slightly. Across the galaxy, news spread fast. Alien broadcasts mocked the situation. Analysts predicted Aaron would die within days. Some expected ritual accidents. Others expected rebellion. Human channels reacted differently. They did not celebrate. They watched. Human leaders said little publicly. Privately, they understood the danger. If Aaron failed, humanity would be labeled lawbreakers. If he succeeded, the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The daughters met Aaron again under council supervision. This time, Aaron spoke first. "You have a choice." They laughed bitterly. "There is no choice," one said. "There is," Aaron replied, "but it scares those in power." He proposed something unheard of: partnership, not ownership; consent, not command; shared authority. The council observers grew uneasy. The daughters did not agree immediately. But they listened. That alone was revolutionary. In the shadows, some leaders began planning Aaron's death, not because he broke the law, but because he followed it too well. The old alien died 3 days later. His final wish had already begun to work. And Aaron Hale stood at the center of a storm that would test not his strength, but the very idea of what power meant in the galaxy. Part 1 ends with the galaxy watching, certain of one thing: the human would not survive. They were wrong. The days after the old alien's death were filled with silence that felt heavier than noise. The law had been sealed. The final wish could not be undone, yet no one moved forward with confidence. Every leader waited, watched, and calculated. Aaron Hale became the most guarded person in the Alliance without ever being named important. His quarters were surrounded by silent drones and ceremonial guards who pretended to protect him while studying every breath he took. The walls were smooth and pale, decorated with symbols meant to remind occupants that the law was always watching. Aaron noticed them immediately. He always noticed patterns meant to control behavior. He spent his time reading, not entertainment. Not history written to praise rulers. He studied raw legal texts, ancient records, and failed cases buried under polite language. The alien law was strict, but it was also careless. It assumed obedience. It never imagined someone would treat it like a puzzle instead of a command. That was the first human advantage. Across the station, the daughters lived in separate wings, each surrounded by attendants and guards. The council feared them almost as much as they feared Aaron. For generations, these women had been trained to obey tradition, not question it. Yet each one carried influence, fleets, and followers. If they united, the balance of power would break. The council believed fear would keep them divided. It was wrong. The first formal meeting between Aaron and the daughters was arranged under heavy supervision. A wide chamber was chosen, open and public, so no one could accuse anyone of secret deals. Council members watched from raised platforms, their expressions tight. The daughters entered together. They did not look at Aaron at first. Their posture was proud, controlled, but anger lived under the surface. This was not the anger of weakness. It was the anger of being cornered. Aaron stood when they arrived. He did not bow. He did not sit higher than them. He stayed level. That detail did not go unnoticed. One of the council observers announced the start of negotiations. His voice was formal, sharp. "This session will determine compliance." Aaron waited until the words ended. Then he spoke. "I want to make something clear before we begin," he said calmly. "I am not here to take power from you." The room shifted. One of the daughters finally looked at him. Her eyes were bright, assessing. "Then why are you here, human?" "Because the law put me here," Aaron said, "and because the law can be followed without cruelty." A murmur spread among the observers. The daughters exchanged brief looks. They had expected arrogance or fear. This was neither. Another daughter crossed her arms. "You cannot change tradition." "I do not need to," Aaron replied. "I only need to obey it honestly." That answer unsettled the council. For hours they talked, not about marriage ceremonies or symbols, but about rights, responsibilities, and boundaries. Aaron asked questions instead of giving orders. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, he never raised his voice. The council grew restless. This was not how power was supposed to work. After the meeting, rumors spread fast. Some claimed Aaron was weak. Others said he was manipulating the daughters. A few, more perceptive, felt something worse was happening. The daughters were beginning to think. Behind closed doors, several council leaders met in private. Their faces were tense, their voices low. "This cannot continue," one said. "He is undermining the structure." "He has not broken a single law," another replied sharply. "That makes him more dangerous," a third said. "The daughters are starting to see choices where none should exist." Plans began to form. The first attempt was subtle. During a ceremonial walk, a platform malfunctioned. Gravity shifted suddenly, enough to send a person tumbling into open space. It was recorded as an accident, a common failure in older stations. Aaron reacted instantly. He grabbed the nearest railing, anchored himself, and pulled a falling attendant back to safety before the gravity fully failed. He did not fall. The footage spread across the station. The council was displeased. The daughters saw the recording. They saw the speed, the calm, the instinct to save someone else first. That night, one of them requested a private conversation with Aaron. The council allowed it, believing observation would be enough. She studied him in silence for a long moment. "You could have let him fall," she said. "Yes," Aaron replied. "Why didn't you?" "Because I don't measure people by usefulness," he said simply. That answer stayed with her. More attempts followed. A poisoned meal that Aaron never touched because he noticed the scent was wrong. A data trap designed to accuse him of legal violations that he avoided by documenting everything in advance. Each failure increased tension. The council began to realize something unsettling. Humans did not survive by dominance alone. They survived by awareness, cooperation, and learning from mistakes faster than anyone else. Humanity's reputation shifted quietly. The daughters began meeting together without council permission. That alone was a shock. Their discussions were cautious at first, but soon became honest. They spoke about fear, expectation, and the limits placed on them since birth. Aaron never demanded entry into those meetings. That was another mistake by the council. When the daughters finally invited him, it was not as an owner but as a voice outside their system. He told them stories of Earth, not of conquest but of struggle, of systems that failed and were challenged, of laws that had once protected only the powerful until people refused to accept them as unchangeable. "You're saying tradition can be wrong," one daughter said quietly. "I'm saying tradition is a tool," Aaron answered, "and tools should serve people, not the other way around." The word spread. Alien media tried to frame the human as a destabilizer. Human media remained careful, almost silent. That silence made the galaxy uneasy. Humanity was watching, learning, and waiting. Then the council made its boldest move. They announced a public trial. Not of Aaron, but of compliance. They accused him of emotional manipulation, a concept loosely defined in alien law. The charge carried severe punishment if proven. The chamber filled with spectators from across the Alliance. The daughters were required to attend. Aaron stood alone at the center. He did not deny influence. He did not apologize. "I did not manipulate," he said calmly. "I communicated." The council argued that communication itself was a weapon, that humans used empathy to weaken authority. Aaron nodded. "If empathy weakens authority," he said, "then perhaps authority was already fragile." Silence fell. The daughters spoke. One by one, they described their experiences, how they had never been asked what they wanted, how the law spoke of honor but ignored consent, how a human outsider had treated them with more respect than their own leaders. The council was unprepared. Alien law allowed testimony. It did not expect rebellion through honesty. The trial ended without a verdict, postponed, delayed, frozen. That was enough. Across the Alliance, lower ranks began questioning orders. Not loudly, not violently, but quietly, persistently. The old alien's final wish had not created chaos. It had revealed truth. And at the center of it all stood a human who refused to rule by fear, proving to the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon was not strength, but the courage to treat others as equals. By the end of Part 2, one thing was clear. The council no longer controlled the outcome. And the law they worshipped was beginning to turn against them. The delay of the trial did not calm the Alliance. It made everything worse. When a system built on fear pauses, people begin to breathe. And when they breathe, they start to think. Across the station, orders were still given, but they were followed more slowly. Guards hesitated before enforcing rules. Officials checked regulations twice, not to obey them, but to see if they truly made sense. The council noticed the shift and felt something they had not felt in centuries: uncertainty. Aaron Hale understood what was happening the moment he saw the guards hesitate outside his quarters. They still stood straight. They still watched him. But their eyes were no longer empty. They were questioning. That made him dangerous. The council convened an emergency session sealed from public view. Voices rose. Accusations flew. "This human has poisoned the structure," one leader said. "He has not broken the law," another replied. "He has turned the law into a mirror," a third snapped. "And we do not like what we see." They agreed on one thing: the situation could not be allowed to continue. If Aaron could not be removed legally, then he would be removed quietly. The next attempt was meant to be final. A formal ceremony was announced, meant to honor progress toward unity. Attendance was mandatory. The daughters would be present. Media would broadcast it across the alliance. It was framed as a step toward peace. Aaron felt the trap immediately. Public events were perfect places for accidents. He prepared anyway. Humans were good at that. The ceremony took place in a massive open hall, its ceiling transparent, showing the curve of the nearby star. Platforms floated at different levels, connected by light bridges. Music filled the air, slow and ceremonial. Aaron stood beside the daughters, not in front of them. That detail was noticed by millions watching. As speeches began, Aaron scanned the environment. He tracked drone patterns, guard spacing, energy fluctuations. Nothing obvious. That worried him more than danger would have. Then it happened. One of the floating platforms supporting the council leaders destabilized. Not enough to collapse instantly, just enough to tilt. Panic rippled through the crowd. Security systems hesitated. Too many fail-safes tried to activate at once. Aaron moved. He did not think. He reacted. He grabbed one of the daughters and pulled her back as a shockwave passed through the hall. The platform dropped suddenly, sending a council leader tumbling toward open space. Before anyone else could act, Aaron launched himself forward, using a collapsing light bridge as leverage. He caught the falling alien with one arm and slammed a stabilizer control with the other. The platform locked. The hall froze. Aaron held the alien until security arrived. Only then did he let go. The cameras caught everything, every angle. The council's attempt had failed in the worst possible way. Not only had the human survived, he had saved one of them. Silence followed the broadcast. Across the alliance, reactions exploded. The official story called it a malfunction. No one believed it. The daughters watched the replay privately later. One of them spoke quietly. "They tried to kill him." Another answered, "They tried to kill all of us." That realization changed something fundamental. For the first time, the daughters understood they were not pawns in a marriage ritual. They were obstacles to power. And Aaron was standing between them and a system that would sacrifice anyone to preserve itself. The council moved quickly after that. They accused Aaron of staging the incident. The charge was weak, but it did not matter. They needed to regain control. A new legal motion was introduced. Ancient, rarely used, emergency authority. It allowed the council to override individual laws in the name of stability. The problem was that emergency authority required unanimous consent from the bonded parties, the daughters. The council summoned them immediately. The chamber was smaller this time. No audience, no broadcasts, just pressure. "You are endangering the alliance," one leader said. "You are breaking tradition," another added. One of the daughters spoke, her voice calm. "We are following the law." "The law was not meant for this," the leader snapped. "Then perhaps the law should have been written better," she replied. The council demanded their consent. They refused. That refusal echoed louder than any rebellion. For the first time in recorded history, bonded heirs had denied emergency authority. The council had no response prepared. Aaron was not present at that meeting, but he felt the shift anyway. The guards outside his quarters were replaced. These ones did not look hostile, they looked respectful. Alien analysts began revising their assessments of humanity. Old files were reopened. Wars humans had survived, plagues they had adapted to. Systems they had broken and rebuilt. A pattern emerged. Humans did not dominate immediately. They endured, they learned. They changed the rules by surviving long enough to expose flaws. The daughters met Aaron later that day. Their tone was different now. No anger, no suspicion. One of them said, "They tried to turn us against you." Aaron nodded. "They always do." "You knew this would happen," another said. "I suspected," Aaron replied. "Systems like this always protect themselves first. Even if it means killing us," the first said. "Yes," Aaron answered softly. Silence followed. Then one of them asked the question that mattered. "If this continues, you will be executed. Why are you still here?" Aaron did not answer immediately. "When I saved the old alien," he said finally, "I didn't know who he was. I just saw someone dying. If I walk away now, this system stays the same. You stay trapped, and the galaxy learns nothing." "You could go home a hero if you refused," she said. "I would go home knowing I let fear decide," he replied. That settled it. The daughters made a choice. They released a joint statement, not accusing the council, not praising the human. They simply stated that any attempt to harm Aaron would be considered an act against them, against their houses, against their fleets. The message spread instantly. The council panicked. They had lost control of the narrative. Lower officials began resigning. Some defected quietly. Others started leaking records of past abuses hidden behind tradition and law. The alliance cracked. Human leadership finally spoke publicly. Their statement was short. Humanity would respect alien law. Humanity would also remember how its envoy was treated. That was not a threat. It was a promise. By the end of Part 3, the truth was impossible to ignore. The human was no longer the one on trial. The system was. And the galaxy was watching to see if it would survive its own rules. The alliance did not fall apart all at once. It began to bend, slowly and painfully, like metal under pressure. After the daughters released their statement, the council chambers stayed closed for 2 full cycles. No public announcements, no broadcasts. That silence was louder than any speech. Across the station and beyond it, people waited. Ships held position, trade routes slowed. Orders were given, then quietly ignored. Aaron Hale felt the shift everywhere he went. The guards no longer blocked his path. They opened doors before he reached them. Some nodded in respect. Others avoided eye contact, as if ashamed of something they had once accepted without question. He did not celebrate. Humans learned long ago that moments like this were fragile. The daughters moved openly now. They met with officials who had never been allowed near them before. They spoke with fleet commanders, trade coordinators, even lower clerks who had only known fear of authority. Each conversation added weight to something the council could no longer lift. Choice. The council finally reconvened and called for a public assembly. They had no other option. The longer they waited, the weaker they became. The main chamber filled again, larger than before. Not just leaders this time, but representatives from dozens of worlds. The daughters stood together at the center. Aaron stood beside them not as a ruler, not as a symbol, but as a witness. The council leader spoke first, his voice carefully controlled. "The alliance stands at the edge of collapse," he said. "Tradition is being questioned, law is being challenged, stability is at risk." Aaron noticed what he did not say. He did not say the human was the problem. The leader continued. "We propose a resolution. The marriages will proceed as written. The human will assume ceremonial authority. In return, all hostilities will cease." It sounded like compromise. It was not. The daughters understood immediately. Ceremonial authority meant silence. It meant being placed on display while real power returned to the council. It meant the system would survive unchanged, wearing a new mask. One of the daughters stepped forward. "No," she said. The word echoed through the chamber. "You refuse peace," the leader demanded. "We refuse a lie," she replied. "This resolution protects you, not the alliance." Murmurs spread. The leader turned to Aaron. "Human, you have influence here. Speak." Aaron took a breath. "I will," he said calmly, "but not for you." He turned to the assembly. "When I arrived here, I was told this system was unbreakable," he said. "That it had survived for thousands of years. That obedience was the same as honor." He paused, letting the words settle. "On my world, we used to believe the same thing." The chamber listened. "We believed laws were sacred because they were old," Aaron continued. "Then we learned something painful. Laws that cannot change do not protect people. They protect power." The council leader interrupted. "You are not qualified to judge our system." Aaron nodded. "You're right, I'm not from here, that's why I can see it clearly." The daughters spoke next. One by one, they described the cost of the system, not in anger but in detail, forced choices, silenced voices. Lives shaped by rules written by those who never had to obey them. The assembly shifted. These were not rebels speaking. These were heirs, leaders, the system's own future. The council made its final move. They invoked the highest punishment allowed by law, not execution. Something worse, exile. Aaron would be removed from the alliance entirely. Humanity would be banned from future negotiations. The marriages would be annulled. Order would be restored. The chamber waited. Aaron felt the weight of it. Exile meant safety. It meant survival. It meant going home. Human leaders had already prepared for this outcome. The daughters looked at him. They did not ask him to stay. That was the hardest part. Aaron thought of Earth, of the systems humans had broken and rebuilt, of the times they had chosen comfort over courage and the times they had not. He stepped forward. "If you exile me," he said, "you will prove everything we have said." The council leader's eyes narrowed. "And if we do not?" "Then you will have to change," Aaron replied. "Not for me, for yourselves." Silence. Then something unexpected happened. A representative from a minor world spoke up. Then another, then another. They did not shout. They did not threaten. They asked questions, simple ones. Why had emergency authority never been questioned before? Why were bonded heirs never allowed consent? Why was stability always defined by the comfort of the council? The questions spread faster than answers. The council tried to regain control, but it was too late. The assembly had tasted something dangerous: participation. The daughters made their final move. They invoked a forgotten clause of the ancient law, one rarely used because it required courage. Any final wish could be reinterpreted by those bound to it if the original intent was fulfilled. The old aliens' intent had been unity, not ownership, not control, unity. They declared the marriages symbolic, voluntary, equal, a bond of alliance, not domination. The law allowed it. The council froze. They could challenge the interpretation, but doing so would require admitting that the law was flexible, that it had always been. They had built their power on pretending it was not. The assembly waited for their response. The council leader lowered his gaze. The resolution passed, not with cheers, not with celebration, with relief. Across the alliance, systems adjusted, not overnight, not easily, but the direction had changed. Aaron was not exiled. He was no longer on trial. The daughters were no longer prisoners of tradition. The council remained, but weakened, watched, and no longer unquestioned. That night, Aaron stood alone at a viewport, watching ships move again. One of the daughters joined him. "You could have left," she said. "Yes," Aaron replied. "Why didn't you?" Aaron smiled faintly. "Because if humans only stand for change when it's safe, we don't stand for anything." She nodded slowly. By the end of Part 4, the galaxy understood something it had never expected. Humanity did not conquer. Humanity stayed. And sometimes staying was the most disruptive act of all. Change did not arrive with celebration. It arrived with work. In the days after the assembly, the Alliance entered a strange new phase. Orders were still given, but now they were questioned. Traditions were still followed, but now people asked why. The council still existed, but its voice no longer filled every space. Aaron Hale remained on the station longer than expected. Officially, his role was complete. Unofficially, no one was ready to let him leave yet. Not because he held power, because he no longer did. The symbolic bond declared by the daughters changed everything. It removed ownership from the law and replaced it with consent. That single shift forced hundreds of connected rules to be reviewed. Legal teams worked without rest. Clerks rewrote procedures that had not changed in centuries. Entire departments discovered their authority had been built on assumptions instead of truth. The system resisted, but it could not fight logic without exposing itself. The daughters took active roles immediately, not as ceremonial figures but as leaders. They opened councils to observers. They allowed questions. They made mistakes in public and corrected them without punishment. To the Alliance, this behavior was unsettling. To humans, it was familiar. Aaron watched it unfold with careful distance. He gave advice when asked. He refused to command. Every time someone tried to place him above the process, he stepped aside. That confused many. Power that refused to hold itself was rare. Word spread far beyond the Alliance. Other civilizations took notice. Some were curious. Some were alarmed. A few quietly began reviewing their own laws, wondering how many old rules survived only because no one had dared to test them. Human leadership finally arrived in person. Not warships, not displays of strength, just diplomats and observers. Their message was simple. Humanity did not come to rule. Humanity came to remember. Remember how systems fail. Remember how fear disguises itself as order. Remember that change always looks dangerous to those who benefit from stillness. The council attempted one final recovery. They proposed a formal closing ceremony to mark the end of the crisis. A chance to present unity, to show control. Aaron agreed to attend. So did the daughters. The chamber filled one last time. The council leader spoke carefully, choosing every word. "The Alliance has endured," he said. "Tradition has adapted." Not changed, adapted. Aaron noticed the language, so did everyone else. When the leader finished, he turned to Aaron. "You may speak." Aaron stepped forward. He did not raise his voice. "I will not speak about what was taken from this system," he said. "I will speak about what it gained." The room quieted. "You gained a future," Aaron continued. "Not because of me, because you chose to listen to voices you once ignored." He gestured toward the daughters. "They did not break your law," he said. "They honored its purpose." He paused. And one day, when this moment becomes history, you will have a choice. You can remember it as the time a human disrupted your order, or as the time you proved your order could survive truth. The council leader said nothing. The daughters spoke last. "We will not ask you to trust us," one said. "Trust must be earned, but we will ask you to watch." That was enough. The ceremony ended without applause, and that made it honest. Aaron prepared to leave the following cycle. The station felt different now. Lighter, less afraid, people did not stare as he passed. Some nodded, some smiled, some simply continued their work. That more than any honor told him the change was real. The daughters met him privately before departure. "You will be remembered here," one said. Aaron smiled. "That's not always a good thing." "It is this time," another replied. "You showed us that survival does not require obedience." Aaron looked at them. "You showed yourselves that." They did not argue. When Aaron boarded the human ship, the Alliance did not issue threats or warnings. It sent data, records, revisions. Proof that the changes were being made permanent. Human analysts reviewed them carefully. They approved. As the ship departed, Aaron looked back once, not in pride, in respect. Across the galaxy, reactions settled into something new: caution, awareness, preparation. Civilizations adjusted their approach to humanity, not with fear but with care. Humans were no longer seen as loud conquerors or fragile newcomers. They were seen as something else: a catalyst. The old alien's final wish reached its true end months later, when a monument was raised on his home world. Not to honor power, but to honor intent. The inscription did not name Aaron. It did not name the daughters. It read simply that unity chosen freely lasts longer than unity enforced. On Earth, the story was taught quietly, not as victory. As reminder, systems matter, laws matter, but people matter more. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing a human can do is walk into an ancient system, obey every rule, and reveal that the rules were never the strongest part of it. By the end of it all, the galaxy understood a final truth. Humanity did not bend the stars. Humanity bent the idea of authority itself, and once that happened, nothing ruled the same way again.